Hello, my friend, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of The Fool Writes Again, the podcast where I, Jinks, your host and imaginary friend, answers the burning question of what happens when you release a writer into the wild and he gets a chance to explore the world. So if you've ever been interested in topics such as plot development, world building, character creation, or even character motivation, then this is the podcast for you, so please stay tuned. And on this week's exciting episode, I'm going to dive into the burning question of what happens when a writer has to get a job. What better way to do that than start off with a couple scenarios. First one being this. Imagine you're an individual who's heard your entire life that you can be whatever you want when you grow up, and you took that to be true. So you decided you were going to strive and aim for the stars, and by that you wanted to be an astronaut. So your entire education path you dedicated to learning how to be an astronaut. You learned about space, you learned about the stars, you did all the physical elements to this. And as soon as you graduated high school, you went to college to get your degree, best suited to be an astronaut. And as soon as you graduated college with your diplomas and your degrees, you were able to apply at NASA and become an astronaut. Your long-held dream of being an astronaut has finally paid off, and you are being sent to space, just like you always dreamed about, because you were told you could be whatever you want when you grow up. What happens next? If that's not the scenario, how about this one instead? Imagine you've spent your entire life going through school, and you finally hit the point where you graduate and you no longer have to be in school. You can join the workforce. But you don't know what you're going to be because you have not been told yet. Instead, every person has to attend a giant ceremony as soon as they graduate school to be told what career field they will be thrown into. It's luck of the draw. It doesn't matter what you want to do. Your interests do not matter. They don't care. If you're very excellent at math, you might be thrown into the kitchen instead. And you're sitting there in the ceremony to see what everyone is going to do with their new career path. Your friends are being called up one by one, being told excellent jobs, stuff suited for them. And then finally, your name is called. You walk up in front of everyone and you are given a career you do not want. What happens next? If that's not the scenario for you, how about this one instead? Imagine you've had absolutely no desire to work. You've put no effort into learning trade skills that can get you a good job. You've put no effort into going to school to learn the material to get a different type of job. You do not want to work. It's that simple. But you've also hit a point where you can no longer support yourself and live. You need a job. So what do? You decide to go to an employment agency and see what they can help with. And you get there and they help you write your resume up, and they have you take an aptitude test to see what you qualify for, and you do pretty decent on it. You don't qualify for every job on a list, but you at least have options on your list. And they give you this list and they set up a whole bunch of interviews, and you start going to these different interviews to see what job you qualify for and what job you actually can get. And eventually you go through enough of the interviews and you start getting the hang of it. You realize it's not that bad. And finally, you've gone through every option that the employment agency offered you. What happens next? If that's not the scenario for you, I've got a final one for you. Imagine you're an individual who lives in a world where every single person is required to work for the government for a couple years after graduating school, doing whatever the government needs. And as soon as your stint with the government is done, you can go and find your job that you actually want to do. And you graduate school and you start your career with the government and you realize this really isn't too bad. This job that they assigned me, I'm actually decent at. And you get more and more proficient at it as you go. And your time with the government's drawing to an end, and you think to yourself, I really don't want to lose this job. I like this. This is what I want to do. So you opt to stay with them. And you do not leave the government to take a civilian job. What happens next? Now I think that's enough with the scenarios. So let's move on. There really isn't too much of a story behind any of these scenarios. It was more of a question of how people get jobs. Over the last several months, I have worked numerous types of jobs, and I've been trying to start my own business for a while now. But I'm also trying to find stable income that can allow me to do what I want, where I want. I would like to get a remote job. I would like to get a job that I can telework, or a job that would send me on work trips around the world. Something that can support what I want to do, which is really travel. I want to travel the world and do what I want. But that's not easy to come by. Though, since I've been spending so much time submitting applications for new jobs over the last couple months, and I've rewritten my resume numerous times to try to find a job I want, and gone to a couple interviews here and there, and talked with lots of my friends who have also been doing similar, because they're trying to find the career they want to be in. It led to the question of, how can I get inspiration for writing from this experience? No one really looks at it and says, I'm going to a job interview, I'm going to write this into a book. This job interview that I'm having to be a retail store manager, so exciting I can turn it into a plot. No one really does that, but it can be used as world building, and that's what I came to realize. Yes, some of these points can become plots, and it's not that hard to turn a world building opportunity into a plot, but it's kind of helpful to know a world building aspect when it comes to your world. How do people get jobs in your world? That kind of affects how people react and how people behave to one another in the job or outside of the job. If every single person is required to serve with the government after they graduate school, every single person in the government might interact with each other differently because they're all forced to do the exact same thing. Yes, they might have different jobs because a government will have a whole bunch of different fields in it still. You might have your accounting side that deals with that, or your agricultural side, or your construction side of everything that deals with the government, because it's not just politics, it's a whole bunch of other things that make the government run. But every person who's graduating high school and has to go to work for the government for a couple years, they all might sympathize with each other because they all have to go through the government and they don't know what job they're getting. And then they go and they hopefully get assigned with their friends and their new departments and all that. And they might grumble and gripe about wherever they were placed because they didn't like it. Or they might be the individual that really likes their job they were assigned and they want to stay with it. Or they might be the individual who is counting down their time until they can leave the government to work wherever they want in their civilian career. Maybe their family owns a business outside of the government and they're just trying to go work for that as soon as they can, which is, 1 year, 2 year, 5 years, however long you choose to make it for your world, because it's world building. Maybe your individual is just doing that. Maybe they're forced to work with a whole bunch of people they don't want to because every single person is forced to work in that kind of field. In this job, maybe all the young high school graduates all go work in a temporary area of the government, and they are kind of working as interns to figure out what field they actually want to be in. And all the department heads everywhere else have to go and draft all the new high school graduates. Maybe your main character wants to go work in an accounting aspect because he's really good with numbers, but he gets stuck in agricultural. Maybe he goes somewhere else and he is the only one drafted from his friends to work in this department, and he is actually the youngest person in the department, and everyone else is twice his age because they really like it, but they needed new fresh blood because it's a department that doesn't really grab high school graduates. They're usually pretty good, and once every other decade they need a new person, and your main character is and he has to work some special gig that is weird. Who knows? There's a lot of possibilities with that kind of world building. But if you play with this idea a little bit more, you go to one of my other scenarios. Every single person doesn't know where they're going to work. The government at least gives you the opportunity. That scenario at least gave you the opportunity to change your career after so long working with the government. But maybe you have a world where you don't get that option. Everyone has to work where they're assigned until they die, or they go AWOL, flee, run away, or something. And now you have authorities tracking them down because they didn't stay in their assigned post. Weird how that world building of getting a job can now lead to a crime spree because someone ran away. There's the plot. Someone ran away from their assigned job because they didn't like it. All because world building made it so someone had to work somewhere. Don't care where they worked, they just don't have to like it. And now you can have it pretty interesting plot point because they ran away. Does the world allow them to run away? Or does the world send enforcers after them immediately and hunt them down, trying to drag them back to their designated work site? What happens if someone tries to run away? Do they get forced back to their work site? Or do they get thrown in prison and essentially win because they don't have to go back to their work site? What happens? There's a lot of possibilities with that idea of world building. And you can change it up however you want because it's your world. I like the idea of as soon as someone graduates school, there's a giant ceremony and everyone is told where they're going to work in front of everyone else. Yes, there are a lot of stories that involve that concept already. I've read it in a lot of webcomics and things like that. I've seen it in anime. I've seen it in literature. I've seen it in lots of different areas because it's an interesting concept. And you can change the time frame. In my scenario, I had it so everyone goes to the ceremony after they graduate school. But I've seen other stories where people are told when they're 5 what they're going to be when they grow up, and they're thrown into training guilds and things like that to prepare them for that job. And that career path dictates their education path and where they're going to live and try to get better with that. And they're immediately split up from their family because they're going to go work a political route. They're going to work a numbers route. They're going to work agriculture. They're going to work in a kitchen, something, all from the time they were 5. You can make them younger and it changes your world building completely, but it gives you plot points too. An individual who is 5 years old and told that they're going to become the next, monarch, what do you do when they're dragged away from their family to learn all this political and aristocracy stuff? Maybe your world allows their family to go, or maybe your world says their family has to stay and do their own careers still, and they can't. Their child is just abandoned to this new training regimen, and they never get to see each other again. What happens? There's a lot of possibilities with that setting and that plot point, just because of world building. My other 2 scenarios allow the possibility of free choice. An individual who's told they can be whatever they want when they grow up learn that they can dream and they can set their mind to whatever career path they want. Do they want to be an astronaut? So they start studying space their entire life. This is their focus. They've bought telescopes to look up at the stars, and they're always facing up, studying the constellations and things like that, just because that is what they want to be. And it doesn't matter what everyone else says. They are focused on this. It is a very free world setting because people can do whatever. There is no hate necessarily on someone who goes to school for a decade to be a doctor or an astronaut. Yes, others might be jealous of them because they didn't go to school and these others are getting paid more, but that's on them. They could have gone if they really wanted to, and they could have tried for something like that. But then there's the possibility that people don't know what they want to do, so they're kind of stuck working paycheck to paycheck in whatever job they can find because they don't really have the skills. Because they were told that they could be whatever they want when they grow up, but they didn't know what they wanted to be. And they're like, I'll figure it out later. I'll figure it out later. I'll figure it out later. Well, later it's finally come, and now they're stuck trying to go to an employment agency to get a job and find somewhere that's hiring. It's not great, but it's still an opportunity to be what you want. You have to go interview for it. You have to have your resume for it. And there's nothing saying you have to stay in that job either. You can go and be whatever you want still. Maybe you're stuck in this employment agency for a year or so while you're still going to school at night to become something else and get your degree so you can go work where you actually want to work. But now you've acquired skills that you didn't have before. You now have references to see how well of an employee you are. There's a lot of possibilities with that too. And all of these are just a couple of the ideas for employment world building. There are so many different options out there for how individual worlds can run with the hiring process. Is your hiring process based on the individual trying to find a job they want? Are individuals assigned at birth to the job they're going to get? Are individuals drafted into different jobs after high school because they actually had the skills required for a specific office or a specific sect of the government or something like that? Are individuals free to leave their jobs and go somewhere else? Can they keep switching back and forth, or are they stuck where they are assigned for life? What actually entails life for employment also? Is there an opportunity for people to retire? What age or whenever? Can they retire at 30, or do they have to wait till they're 90 and they're stuck working in the mines till they're 90 because that is the way of your world building employment? Maybe there's the opportunity for individuals to progress through their career field. Maybe when they're just out of high school, they're forced to work in the mines and actually use a pickaxe, but as they get older and more proficient, they can rise. Now they become a supervisor and they become a manager, they become stuff as they keep going higher and higher, and they're no longer doing as much physical labor. So now when they're 90, they're not actually swinging a pickaxe. They're actually directing everyone else and managing the entire process. What happens there? It's a possibility on that, along with the possibilities of, do they have to work somewhere for so many years before they can actually go and do what they want? Do they have to serve their time working for the government or the military or a religious organization, something, before they're eligible to do what they really want to do? Is there the possibility of staying on with their enlistment service because they really liked it more than they thought they would, and they don't want to leave and go get a civilian job? Possibilities there. What happens when people leave their jobs? In one of the free employment areas, people might be able to leave their job just fine and go wherever they want because people can work wherever they want. But in a world where employment is forced upon the individual on whatever they do, maybe they're tracked down, hunted, and thrown into prison. Maybe they're chained to their machine on the line and they're forced to work there even more with less pay. Maybe they're forced to work, or are they dragged back to their office and pretty much chained to the desk because they ran away. How are people paid in that situation? If they're thrown in a prison, they're obviously not necessarily doing what they were hired to do, but they also don't have the freedom that they wanted. If they're chained back to their desk, are they still paid the same because they ran away, or are they punished and penalized for running away, and now their pay is docked for so long and they have to essentially work back the hours that cost the government to hunt them down? They now have acquired a debt, a social debt that they have to pay back. The more I talk about it, the more I realize how much employment can impact a world. There are so many different options, and there's nothing saying that the entire world has to behave the same way. Different regions can operate under a different aspect than others. One half of the world might force individuals to work in a specific area while the other half has free employment. That might also lead to a plot point too. The individuals who are forced to work, maybe your main character doesn't like where they were assigned, so they know that if they can run away and make it to the free area, they're safe. They're free. They can get the job they want and hide and start a new life somewhere else on the other side of the world. The only caveat is they have to get there. And they have to get there while being hunted by the enforcers of the political side, who are hunting them down and trying to drag them back to their work site. There's an interesting plot right there. Doesn't matter what the job is, it's just an idea based on the world building aspect of, this is how jobs are assigned in this world. And you can take it whatever direction you want. It could be whatever genre, it could be whatever you want. But my friend, it's getting to that point of the day, and I'm realizing I can keep going on and on about this, though I really can't, because I still have a lot of other things I have to do today. So I'm going to start calling it. But before I do, I have a prompt for you. Write a story about an individual who is told that they have to work in a field that they have absolutely no experience in, and they spend more time trying to run away than actually working. I don't care the genre, whether it's horror, fantasy, romance, or action. And I don't care the format, whether it's poetry, flash fiction, a journal entry, or even a song. As always, all I really care about is you have fun with it and make the most out of it. But now it really is time for me to call it a day and let you go. If you enjoyed the content of this week's episode, please give me a follow. And if you want any more content from the Jinks'd world, visit my website at jinksdworld.com. That is JINKSDWORLD.com. Until next time, have fun writing.